Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Shut Up and Do It podcast, place where you can come and hang out with us while we go through all things real estate and business and life, while bringing you top quality speakers and topics, all who believe in a get it done manner. I'm your host, Nick Allerard, creator of the complete deal flow system and principal with the AA Real Estate Group based in the Woburn, Mass area. And I have an awesome guest with us here today. Her name is Christine McCarron. She's local. We usually have some national people here. We have this young lady straight from the Boston area. She's with the RE/MAX Luxury Sales Agent team, specializing with first-time homebuyers and first-time investors. We all know that first-time homebuyers and first-time investors might need a little more hand-holding, so she is the hand-holder for those people. She's an investor. She uses the BRRRR Strategy and has house-hacked her way into multiple primary residences. Hope she talks about the one she is in today, because I see some drywall mud behind her, which is awesome. And she is a podcaster with the Get Your Fill podcast locally in the greater Boston area, and also the author of the book, Empower Your Inner Millionaire, a woman's guide to financial independence through real estate investing. She'll be here supporting that today. We'll be putting stuff in the show notes, and she's gone through her own struggles. So she's here today to share her journey. Christine, thank you so much for being on the show. We appreciate it.
Oh, thank you, Nick. I'm really excited to talk with you.
Well, that's awesome. Why don't we start, as always, by telling us a little bit about your story and what got you into real estate and life in general?
So I don't know why, but I've always been interested in real estate. And I remember I think I was like 16 years old, and I was reading the paper in the living room floor with my dad, and I found this 3-family in Lawrence for like $16,000. And I said, "Oh, Dad, that seems like a great deal. We should totally buy it." And he's like, "Oh, Lawrence, rah, 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 whatever." So I think because of that, like initial frustration, like fast forward now 6 years, and I'm out on my own, I'm married, I'm doing my thing, and I see this property in Lawrence, but this time it's like $116,000 or something. But I think I still had that like, oh, this is such a great deal. So I went out and I bought that thing, and I'm pretty sure that the next day was when the market turned. Maybe it was like even that night. You know, so many things, right? You don't know what you don't know. I didn't have a real estate agent. I didn't ask anybody for advice. I didn't have my own attorney, nothing. So the guy who owned the place, who sold it to me, he moved out the 2 tenants who were paying, leaving me with a deadbeat tenant. So I'm in there, knowing nothing, not even speaking the language of the people who live there, trying to like figure that out. And I went into this, like, I did find one tenant. I did manage to get one person in there who actually paid the rent. But then I went into this like my whole strategy was like, I'll avoid it. If I don't go there, maybe it'll be okay. So at one point, I had to go there just for the heck of it. I don't know why I even went there, but
I'm sorry to interrupt you. What year was this too, Christine?
This would have been, let's see, like the 80s.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. We're going,
Yeah.
Wow. I thought you were only like 29. Never mind.
Again, I'm having what is this, like my, 20th anniversary of my 29th birthday? But yeah, so I went there, and for some reason, I opened the basement door, and there was about, 3 feet of water in there. All the pipes were gone. And the whole thing's like little things floating by. I'm like, okay, this is not great. So that was my like entree into real estate investing.
Oh my gosh.
Didn't go that well.
Your dad missed out on $5,300 per unit in Lawrence. I just want to say that. That would be a tough one to miss out on.
I know.
Crazy stuff. Good for you. Wow. All right. So tenant issues and pipes issues. Wow. So that was your first deal. Crazy.
Yeah.
And how did you recover from that? Did you manage to renovate the property? Did you just kind of dump it and sell it as is?
So at the same time, I don't know if it had anything to do with that, but I went through a divorce like not long after that. I don't know if the two are related or not. So I went to the attorney and I said, look, I've got this property. What should I do? I'm trying to keep afloat of it. I don't know what. And he said, let it go. And I was like, what? He said, just let it go. It's losing money every single day. Just let it go. You obviously don't know what the heck you're doing. So I did. I just let it go into foreclosure.
Gotcha. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
That's one heck of a wake-up call. You and I have that in common, as we heard. So how did that impact you going forward at that point?
Well, I actually was... I didn't lose the house, but my husband ended up with the house in the divorce. So I was now renting, and I did that for several years. I just couldn't, I'm like, oh, my credit's ruined. My life is ruined, blah, blah, blah. I'm no good at this, whatever, like the little low grade depression kind of thing. And just was working to try to get on top of the hole, that you dig yourself when you're trying to make those payments and you're going into debt everywhere. And it was probably, I don't know, another 5 years before I bought anything else. And, I think it was only in the last 10 years that I figured out that real estate had cycles. A lot of young investors think that, the market's just going to go up, actually it doesn't work like that. So,
well, that's what the appraisers and the National Association of Realtors say. It just only goes up. It never comes down.
Never comes down. No, it's wonderful. Yeah. Okay. Well, newsflash.
Wow. Yeah. Gotcha. So, all right. As we know on this podcast specifically, right, sometimes our professional lives, it's inevitable that they will leak into our personal lives. And I share that with you too, Christine. So I went through my first divorce with my first tough, spot. So it is what it is, right? And you're just trying to live and just get through the day. It's difficult. So when that happened, then you were out of the credit game, I assume, for a while, right?
Yeah.
So what were your next steps beyond that?
Well, it was, I did work really hard to get my credit back on track. And I think it might have even been a little easier then, I guess, because a lot of people were going into foreclosure. That was kind of a mess, around that time. So I got like a credit card that would give me like $1,000. I'm like, I got $1,000 credit card. And I just kept, plugging away at that once I got everything paid off. But it was a big mess of like negotiating with credit card companies and, negotiating with the bank to let the place go and all this. It was just a big icky, sticky mess. But, the people who I talked to who have been successful in real estate, right? They had some horrible thing happen. And then they were just like, okay, well, that was a great learning experience. When any normal person would say, no, run away, no, that was, I learned so much.
But when you're going through it, right, you don't see the forest or the trees, right? So that was your first investment property. What was your full-time? Were you doing this full-time? In real estate full time? No, at that time I was working for in customer service for a company that made labels. Gotcha. Okay. So you did have like a security position, right? You had your job, right? Yeah. And you could still, okay, good. Yeah. Good.
I had a day job, so it was okay. But
okay. So you had to get your head around it, and then you came back out of the credit. Okay, so after you're rebuilding your credit and you're kind of looking to the future at this point, and you had your full-time job to kind of keep you stable. What made you get back into the real estate game, or what steps did you take? Yeah, I still thought it was a good idea. So I bought a condo for myself, and then I ended up renting that out and moving to a different condo, and it's just kind of fixing it up. It was like pre-BRRRR strategy, so I just bought and rehabbed and rented, but I didn't refinance because I hadn't paid cash, so it didn't make sense. And then I moved to another place, was fixing that up, and same thing happened. That the real estate market kind of tanked, and I was like, how can it be possible that my house is worth less than what I paid for it again? So this time I had 2 properties that were worth less than I paid for them. So I did short sales on those and learned about all that process. Oh my gosh. How many? Yeah, I know, right? Okay, wait, this is interesting. So how many years ahead of the foreclosure were the short sales now? How many years are we talking? I think probably about 10 years, maybe 15. So you had one reset button in the 80s, and then you had another one just here. Okay, yeah. Wow. So you had 2 big ones. Okay. Yeah. So what did you learn about short sales during that time? I learned a ton about short sales, and now I'm actually really good at helping people who need to do short sales, having lived through a couple of them. But yeah, just how, from the bank's perspective, right? The bank doesn't want to be a real estate owner. So you are able to negotiate with them. You are able to say, look, here's somebody who wants to sell me, who wants to buy the house, the only person in the world who wants to buy this house. This is all they're willing to pay. What do you think? Can we kind of call it a day and just like forget we ever knew each other kind of thing? And so that was, I guess I am a slow learner, as we're, now, especially now we're talking about it. I realize, gosh, I could have picked up some of those lessons a little more quickly, but. No, not as a slow learner, just different lessons, right? We learn these lessons throughout the way. And you said it earlier, Christine. I mean, our listeners here, we have people everyone goes through struggles. And what makes me sick is my rant, right? Is when everyone, social media is the top 1% of the top 1% of their life that they are willing to share with the world. And the whole reason we started this podcast was to show people that even the most successful people, be in real estate or business, are the ones who went through the shit. And
Right.
you have gone through the shit. And now, not once, but twice. So you went through this, and I relate with you on that too, with 5 hard resets for myself. So, and this is the mid 90s, I assume, or the 90s-ish, where you're going through these, you bought a condo for yourself and now you're going through these short sales.
Yeah.
So it knocked you back down in the credit game again that you had just rebuilt for the 10 years prior.
Yeah.
But real estate was still your way. Like, what was your passion for real estate? Why did you keep coming back to real estate?
I wish I knew. Like I said, as a kid, I always was like, I've always loved buildings. I've always loved like just the whole idea of owning places that you can visit. Do you know what I mean? Like I do have stock, and all that stuff. But, when I show up at Warren Buffett's, annual meeting, he's not going to say, oh man, Chris, what color you think we should paint this, the lobby here. I love doing a lot of the work myself. Strangely, even though I'm not particularly necessarily good at it. You know what? My thing now is Airbnbs. And I love the Airbnbs because I love like fixing up the house and decorating it and, the pictures and the whatever. It's just a fun kind of, I wish I could tell you because then I could probably quit, what the draw was. It's like a gambling addict,
That's awesome. Where are you doing your Airbnbs right now? What areas?
In the White Mountains.
In the White Mountains. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, just a little bit south of North Conway area. So
Gotcha.
They're perfect. That's a great area. It's really 3.5 seasons, so it's, and the people for the most part, I started up there because I didn't want to buy rental property in the areas where I could afford to buy it. Do you know what I mean? I thought, I don't want to buy a rental property where I'm going to be afraid to knock on the door. And you know what I mean? It was kind of some rough neighborhoods. But up there, you can buy a single family home, for under $150,000 and have a nice place that, you could put a little sweat equity into. And then really fun, wonderful tenants who are so excited to be there. And they're, they're short term. They're not going to say, they're never going to, for the most part, call you up and complain about something or whatever. They're just so happy to be there and happy to be on vacation. Grateful for all the cute furniture you put in there or whatever. What I mean? So for me, it's a better experience than, buying a place, nothing against like Brockton or whatever, but even just a drive to Brockton is a pain in the butt for me. So, I mean, it is actually farther, obviously, to go to the White Mountains, but
yes, it is. But you don't have to drive through the city, and it's not Brockton; it's the White Mountains.
Exactly.
But for those of you listening that are not from local, so White Mountains, she's referring to like some ski resort areas up. We're in the greater Boston area, so it's about an hour and a half, would you say, north of Boston?
It's at least a couple hours. Yeah, it's about 2 hours with no traffic. So
just no traffic, so that's good. Around here, locally, what I've seen, and maybe you've seen the same, Chris, is they're changing a lot of the laws, at least in the cities here, where we're not even allowed to do Airbnbs, right? 30-day or more rentals only.
Right.
And has that impacted your business at all or not quite?
It hasn't at all up there. I mean, there are parts of North Conway, certain districts that don't allow any short-term rentals. But so far, like, Madison, it's just a nice, sleepy little town and, nobody really is too concerned about it. Luckily, so far, the majority of the people are nice, respectful. Just cool people who just want to have a good time and go on vacation, so. Yeah,
for sure. Okay, so let's go back to your story. You just had these short sales, and now what?
Hey, let's start over. This sort of the same thing. I mean, the problem is, right? I mean, real estate is cyclical, but you don't actually have to sell it when it's down, and that's the problem that I couldn't seem to get through my head. You just hang in there, First of all, don't buy it when it's at the absolute top. And if you do happen to make that mistake, just get some reliable renters in there. And I stopped doing that. Like at that time, I wasn't doing the analysis to say, gee, if I don't want to live here for the rest of my life, are rents in the area going to be high enough to support me not living here? And I didn't do that analysis. So the first place that I bought and then moved out, it was costing me like $300 a month just to own the place, And so that's, it's not sustainable and it's not logical, it's just now that the market's turned around up there, so like what I have been holding on to it all this time. And then the same thing with the next one. I was like, okay, I've just done all this because my flip style is like a flip that takes a year to do, so it's not always the best strategy. Like I'm doing that here, right? It's just this long-term flip,
All right. So Chris, I want to talk about this for a minute. And I hope you look at this as friendly discussion because I would like to. You're house hacking. So you're living in your houses and you still do. And this is a passion for you. I realize that, right? So you even say you like to kind of work with your hands, maybe in the physical part of getting things done, which is brilliant. But is the goal here to live and to make money both at that one time? Or what's your primary goal when you're house hacking?
Well, so this particular house that I have, it's a fantastic location. It's right across the street from the beach. So I love that. And it's
so
like
when you're sitting in right now, you mean like where you
The one I'm in right now. Yeah.
Gotcha. What beach? Where you told me before.
Riviera Beach.
Riviera Beach. Okay.
Yeah. And it's gorgeous. It's a fantastic location. Every morning, cross the street, see the sunrise. I mean, it's amazing. And so I knew I wanted to buy this house, but between the flood insurance and, I don't ultimately want to have an actual job. You know what I mean? I want to just be able to live off my investments, right? That's what everybody wants to do, I think. It's certainly what I've always wanted to do. So I wanted to reduce the amount that it cost me to live here. And my initial hope for this, because this has a kind of a weird lot that I wanted to develop. So I wanted to tear down this house and build 8 condos kind of in my backyard. And because there's so much building going on, I don't know if you've been in Riviera Beach lately, but they've added over 700 units. And so the traffic, everybody's yakking about traffic. Well, it's the beach. Sorry. You move to a place that people want to be. Go figure. So, because I needed a special permit, I couldn't build it by right. I needed a special permit. So they used me as an example to say, oh, hey, we're saying no to this person who wants to build 8 units, but, these other 700 units were by right. So sorry, we couldn't do anything about that, but boy, we shut her down, So it looks like, at least right now, I'm not going to be able to do this big development project. I mean, it's not big for me and big for the space actually. But so I'm like, okay, well, so what I am doing instead is I've divided the house into 2 and I got permission from the city to make this a legal 2-family. So I'm turning it into 2, 1-bedroom units. One I'm going to rent all the time, and one I'll probably only rent in the summer. Mm-hmm. And then, everybody's like, well, what are you going to do in the summer? I don't know, I'll go couch surfing, for now. I just, I'll just, I don't know, because I find that I enjoy the beach at least as much in the winter as I do in the summer.
I do the same.
And in the summer, I like to go, in the summer, I like to go to the beach with my mother, and she lives, in Haverhill. So I think I'm just going to, at least for 1 year, I'm just going to hang because I have this very specific trajectory. For example, one of my Airbnbs in New Hampshire has like it's bigger than a shed. It's probably like maybe 15 by 15. And I'm going to turn that into a tiny home. So that'll be a second income property on the same lot. And then, one of my other ones, I'm going to actually do a 1031 exchange to a different one that has more land and do the same thing. So I'm going to have the primary residence and then there'll be a tiny home like in the yard just to sort of double up on that kind of thing. Once those are all in place, then, I'll just buy a different house, and wait for the market to change here.
Okay. So tiny houses, you will be the speaker because I don't have anybody on tiny homes yet.
Really?
Perfect. Yes.
Oh yeah. I've done a ton of work on, a ton of research on tiny homes, a lot of information on that. And I'm actually, one of my friends who's an architect and I are starting our first creation of a tiny home. So.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
all right. Yeah,
I'd love to talk about that.
We'll get you back on for sure because we need that topic to be covered for sure. That's awesome.
Oh, well, the house I just sold was a what they call a small home because it was over 400 square feet. So it's considered a small home, but it was adorable. It's like 680 square feet. Cutest house you ever saw.
Yeah. That is pretty cute. My second time being a bachelor, I was back in a 416 square foot 1-bedroom apartment condo, and I loved it. Yeah. But also it was, as a single guy, so we don't really need much.
Well, it's just the stuff, right? I only need like a decent sized closet because otherwise you just accumulate too much junk. And that's why I actually sold that house. I wish I hadn't. I wish I had just rented it. But anyway, I sold it because I started seeing someone and I just felt like there wasn't really room for us both there. He had all of his like paperwork and stuff in his trunk, like his trunk was his office. I said, hey, maybe I could get a little bigger place. But now, of course, I'm turning this into 2 tiny homes. So
that's really cool. So true Renaissance gal here. So you're just going around, you've had your short sales now in the 90s, but you ultimately, kept coming back to real estate because you had that passion for it. And then tell me your path from there.
So a similar thing, I had to do the whole rebuilding your credit BS and all that kind of stuff. And then I got to the point where I had, I don't know, well, I guess I had like a friend I had a couple friends who were willing to invest with me. And I had a commercial space at one time with 2 other partners and actually opened an import shop there. And
wow.
But the last market drop, like 2008, was when I finally figured it out. And I was looking online for properties that were under like $60,000. And I found this house in Revere, not this one, but a different one, still like 2 blocks from the beach, a block from the T. It was on the market for $60,000. And I was like, oh my God, of course it was a foreclosure,
Mm-hmm.
And I found a friend who was willing to, because I could still, at that point, I still couldn't get a mortgage. Well, I couldn't get a mortgage because I was in real estate by that time. And, of course, you need to have 2 years of showing it. But if you have a good accountant, it takes a long time to show any profit. So, I couldn't get a loan.
It's fun, they say. Lose your benefits, lose your W-2, become unfinanceable. Yay! Get sued.
Exactly. Yeah, but actually, I love being self-employed. That's a whole nother topic. But I hear about people. Well, I mean, right here, like 7:00 in the morning, they're lined up to go to work, and I thought, no thanks. Pass on that.
Yeah, very, very cool. Okay, so you saw that Revere property, 60,000. You had investors come in, and what was that deal like?
Well, it was kind of funny because my one friend wanted to buy it with me. She actually had approached me to start with and said, hey, you want to buy a house together? I said, sure. So she was going to get the mortgage, and it was a Bank of America foreclosure. Stop me if this is getting too long, but so Bank of America was the bank who was selling the home because they had foreclosed on it. They wanted us to get pre-approved from Bank of America, naturally. So my friend did that in Dallas. That's where she lives. She got pre-approved in Dallas. So we're all set. We're ready to go. But Bank of America, the lender, was making all these demands because it had been foreclosed on. So the pipes were broken. There was no electricity. There was no plumbing. It just wasn't like that. And the deck was not safe. So Bank of America, the lender, is saying, oh, we need this deck rebuilt. We need to have the electricity on, all this kind of stuff. And Bank of America, the seller, is going, wow, this is a pain in the neck. We're doing all this stuff. We're putting all this money into this house. So I got they paid to rebuild the deck. They paid to turn the electricity on, which it had fallen. The actual feed had fallen from the street. And then the next thing was going to be the plumbing. And so finally, Bank of America, the seller, just said, that's it. We're not going to do any more work. So I said to the real estate agent, I said, geez, I can probably come up with $50,000 cash. You think they'd take less for the house in cash? So they did. So after they paid to rebuild the deck, after they paid for the electricity, then they ended up taking $10,000 less
oh my gosh.
for the house, just because their own bank was such a pain in the neck to work with.
Welcome to the big banks, right?
Yeah, you gotta love them.
That's crazy. All right. Well, good. So that one seemed to work out well for you then, huh?
Yeah, it did. It worked out great.
Was that a rehab or a rental, or what did that end up being?
It was in one of my little long flips, so I lived there and gutted it to the studs, just started right from scratch on it. The roof was leaking, the chimney was leaking, took it down, redid everything, new heating system, all new plumbing, electrical, the whole thing. Of course, I lived there the whole time, which was a really lot of fun.
Let's do that now. I want to do a deep dive into house hacking because I don't think we've had actually a speaker that does this deep dive. When you are buying a property and and your intent is to live there as well as do the work, what's the first steps? I really want to know the nitty gritty. How do you even move into this? Step one.
You always need to have one space in the house that you're going to do last. So I took the room that used to be the kitchen and I just made that my bedroom. So it was my kitchen, my bedroom, that was the only room that was not going to be gutted at that point. And then the whole rest of the house just got destroyed. And then once that's done, you can move out of that room and then go in and demo that room and turn it into something else. So that's the first thing, is like, give yourself an oasis, like one place where you can go when the whole house is full of dust and filth. And, this is the one room that doesn't get where the electrical doesn't get disconnected and, whatever. So, but then, you just need a plan. You just need to say, okay, some people go room by room, and that's a much more logical way to do it, but it's not necessarily. You can do that if it's just a little bit of a renovation. But when you're really doing a gut rehab, you might as well do as much of the house as possible.
Right.
At that time.
And so you have a plan. So you move in, day one, you move in, assuming you have working electrical, plumbing, potentially, right? Because I'm sure there's probably times that there isn't, right?
You do have to have, obviously, a working bathroom and, kitchen, you can probably get away with just I've done a lot of dishes in the bathtub, that's not a big deal. And you can get away with a microwave. I'm not a big chef, anyway, so I don't really mind that much. I like to eat out. So, but like I had guests stay over, and we're like in this little tiny room. Oh, come on in, whatever. But you need to have the bare minimums, or some way, if it's going to be short term, you can always, shower at the gym or whatever. But, you don't want to have to run to the gym every time you need to use the bathroom. You need to have the bare essentials. But,
Gotcha. And then you wake up the next day. So you move in day one, you have your little kitchen where you're sleeping in and eating and cooking in. And then day two, you wake up, and then what?
Start taking walls down.
So do you actually have like a plan? So you're like, all right, number one, I'm going to start demoing this room. Or you're just been like, I have now demo on my plate. I'm going to do it. And as long as it takes me to do it and still enjoy myself, I'm going to do that.
Right. Exactly.
Okay.
So I usually try to, sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. This is great. I always wanted to know.
You've never done this, Nick?
No, I have. I moved in places I moved into would need like a cosmetic, like I would paint the walls and maybe replace some doors. I've never done a gut rehab and moved in. Like, that's just crazy to me. And I love it.
You're probably too smart.
No. This is cool. So day two, keep going. This is good.
So I usually try to do all the demo in like a couple of days, because it's a mess. You got the dumpsters, you've got the dust, you got, especially a house like this, where this house, this particular house that I'm talking about, it was like built to be a beach cottage, right? So it was never like particularly well constructed, So I had a friend come over. This is when you find out who your friends are too. I had a friend come over. We spent 2 days just like tearing down everything, schlepping it out the door to the dumpster, getting rid of everything. And then, then you can just start, you see what you have, But I have this thing, I don't know if it's a blessing or a curse. Like when I walked into that house, even before I saw it, because I was actually, the day that house came up on the market, I was on a plane to London. I was leaving to go to London. So I said to my friend, hey, will you go look at that place? And if it's halfway decent, I want to buy it. So I'm doing all this faxing and buying the place from London, thinking, it's good you can do that kind of stuff now. But so before, when I had only seen the pictures, I already knew. I said, I think that roof is big enough. I'm going to put it a loft. I'm going to put the kitchen here. That back room should be the bedroom, blah, blah, blah. And that's just, and that's the way it ended up coming together. It's just the way I had first envisioned it. So I don't know.
Gotcha. That's okay though. That's okay. So you do the demos first and then the framing, and then do you bring in your own subcontractors?
Yeah.
Is what you do for the electrical, plumbing, HVAC, that sort of thing. Okay.
Yeah, I'm the unofficial GC of the
I love it though. This is great. Okay. And is there a time pressure on them? Like, do you give people deadlines? Do you give yourself a deadline or not really? Just as you go?
Yeah, it depends. I'm fortunate to have friends in the trades who are sometimes willing to do work for, very little or less than they would normally charge. So you can't give them any type of time constraint. You can't just say, look, I know I'm not paying you, but you get your butt over here, That doesn't really fly. So yeah, I didn't really pressure anybody to get anything done at any particular time, because it just sort of also evolves. Like, give myself some deadlines. Like, I wanted to have Thanksgiving. I wanted to host Thanksgiving at my house. So the granite guy comes over and he's like, where's the kitchen? I said, it's going to be right here. But where is it now? I'm like, it's still at IKEA at the moment.
Wow.
But it's gonna. Nice. I said, I have it written down right here. And he's like, are you kidding me? You want me to create granite? I said, you have to, because I'm having Thanksgiving here. So it's like, what? It was like, I don't know. So I think it was a week and a half before, and there's like no kitchen there. I said, oh, don't worry. But the plumber and the electrician were both in the basement getting the heat going on Thanksgiving morning. So they ended up coming up and having Thanksgiving with us.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome. Good for you. True house hacking with all your subs there at a Thanksgiving table. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Very, very cool. Okay. So has that been primarily your journey? You have your Airbnbs, you have your house hacking projects that you're doing here. Yeah. And what else do you find yourself doing these days?
Well, my primary thing, I guess, my quote unquote job is a real estate agent.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to give new buyers the benefit of my, journey.
Journey being overcoming challenges and construction 101 and 202. Yeah. And right. You've got a lot going on here. Yeah.
I think it is helpful for folks who really, a lot of young people don't know anything about, what's it going to take? Like, okay, I know I don't like this. What's it going to take? Is it really realistic? And, or to say to them, this looks like asbestos, or this looks like mold, or, I don't know about this. And, just different, to make them aware of something long before they would have to put an offer and have the home inspection and have it all come out at that time. Yeah. Just to try to give them a little bit of experience in that regard. But also if they're like, oh, I like this, but it's like, you know what, you could very easily do X, Y, Z and change the whole. I remember being at one condo and, they're like, oh, I said, oh, this room should be this. And, just like in my mind, the same thing, like, oh, this should open up to the deck and da, da, da. And like, they're like, oh, wow. And it just helps people to see it a little different way. Because I do think if you don't have that construction experience, it's very difficult to envision, for a lot of people to envision how something could look. They're just stuck with, this is where the wall is, it's like, don't, worry about that.
Yes. Oh, for sure. Okay. You say that's one of your passions right now, new time investors and new first time home buyers. That's really,
we actually, sorry, go ahead.
No, I usually ask the question, what has been, without saying names or addresses, but what's been like the most challenging transaction that you or a buyer has had, and what happened?
Well, like I said, I usually try to keep them in the beginning from going down a road where it's going to be a real nightmare.
That's a good point. Usually I feel like everybody has one, but you're right. Maybe you don't because you have taken that due diligence side.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of one where we discovered something really horrible, but I don't have one in recent memory anyway. So
dead body.
Yeah. Dead body in the basement. Oops.
Gosh, that's happened, The more deals we do, Christine, that happens. So
more dead bodies. Well, I've found a lot of dead rodents and skeletons of little squirrels and stuff in the wall. But other than that, no human dead bodies.
That's a good thing then too, for sure.
Yeah, so tell
me about how you got into writing as an author.
Yeah, it's sort of funny because I always thought I wanted to write like a murder mystery because that's what I like to read. I mean, I do read, other kind of books. That was what I thought. So I actually have tried to write a couple of like fiction books where, some intrigue happens or whatever. So I went to a book writing seminar and I was talking to the person who gave the seminar and he said, well, what do you do? Whatever. And he said, well, if you make your money from real estate, why don't you write a real estate book? And I'm like, oh, well, I guess I could do that, So yeah, it wasn't like, oh, I need to share my vision. It was more like, oh, I suppose if I'm not going to succeed writing a murder mystery, then I guess I could write a real estate book. But it actually became a really fun project.
And what was your passion or inspiration behind it? I mean, so that was how you got the topic, but then where did you come up with the stories inside?
Well, a lot of it is, I was trying to think of when you're first starting with the idea of real estate investing, what are the steps? So each chapter is more or less either a type of real estate investing or a step that you need to take and understand in order to get there. And there are a lot of stories in there about, things that went wrong in my career, which you can imagine to fill a couple books. But also I interviewed a ton of people, which I really enjoyed. And that sort of was part of the impetus for the podcast, because once you start listening to people's stories, you just learn so much. You really can, it's just like people who might not want to talk to you otherwise, you say, hey, I have a podcast, like, oh, okay, I'll be a guest on your podcast. Like, yeah. And then you get to talk to them, right? You probably wouldn't, I shouldn't say this, but I don't know that we would have met, right? If it wouldn't have been for the podcast.
No, true. That's a true story. Yeah. That's a true story. Very cool though. So you show us a picture of your book here. We got your book right there.
So I like the thing, if you're not able to see it, it's a gold house sitting on a pile of money is the cover of the book. And I really like that because that's how I feel. It's like, real estate is a real potential for just changing your whole life, raising your net worth, raising your standard of living, the whole thing.
100% agree. And you and I think are unique in that we've also found more of a passion in this industry, right? Like your passion being helping people and first-time homeowners and investors. And for me, real estate was a means to an end. I just wanted to travel to every single country in the world and have local cuisine and have local alcohol in every single country in the world. But that's changed, right? So now with our people that we want to care about it and leaving an impact on the world and different people. It's interesting how we find our profession, and through our profession is also maybe one of our passions, right?
Yeah.
You'd
Definitely.
agree?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're so lucky in that way, Nick. Don't you think that, so many people they just are going through the motions, they just hate their job and they're just hoping that they can, just stick with it long enough to retire and get some kind of pension or whatever. And it's like, life's too short,
100%. There it is. Like those people out on Revere Beach Parkway right now, just waiting.
Exactly. Cursing about the traffic. Saying, why don't you park your car and get out and walk on the beach, man? It's just like. Nope.
What would be one big tip you'd give to any real estate investor starting out today? The best tip you have?
The big mistake I made is I didn't know what I didn't know, so I didn't ask for help. All my mistakes probably could have been avoided if I would have known enough to ask for help from the right people. And so that's what I would say is like, find somebody who is already doing what you want to do and just pick their brain as much as they'll let you.
That's pretty good. Okay. It's funny because I'm reliving as we're talking, just all of your resets and my resets, we have some similar ones. And it's just funny, I'm reliving them now as we're talking. And it's just, I'm starting to sweat, but at the same time, like we're so grateful for what we went through. And you're right, though. If I I invested in a whole bunch of mentors and gurus back in the day. And there were a couple good ones, but a lot of them were not as good, right? And it's really, maybe you'd agree with me. I feel like the best person that you can learn from would probably be someone in your own market, right? Like someone local, someone that's just willing to help and looking to better you in your own business. And that's a passion for a lot of people, people who have made it in real estate and just want to kind of give back. Yeah. So 100% agree with that. That's really good. How can people get in touch with you, Christine?
Well, there are a lot of ways. I have about 80 websites.
We'll take 3. We'll put them in the show notes.
So the one for the book, the book is what is EYIMbook.com. So Empower Your Inner Millionaire, EYIMbook.com. And you can also find the podcast there. And that's a fun one because there's actually like a quiz that you can take to find out what kind of investor you could potentially, so it's like you assess your risk level, your money, all this kind of things. And it gives you some ideas of one type of investing or a couple types of investing that would work for you based on your answers to those questions. So that's kind of fun. And then my regular one is BostonREGuru.com.
BostonREGuru.com. Love that.
So that has, the blog on it. So there's tons of different helpful tips on the blog, including things like what we were talking about when you were on my podcast, like solar energy and stuff like that. There's information about smart devices and investing and finding good tenants and, service animals and, like all the kind of stuff that you might need.
That's awesome. Good stuff. All right. So we'll make sure we put those in the show notes too, those 2 websites. And of course, a copy of your book. And is there anything, I'm trying to think if there's any last parting words you have for people. Oh, you know what? I've got a good question for you. I haven't asked this in a while. And it's like one of my favorite questions to ask. And I get it from Tim Ferriss. What is your favorite purchase that you've made in the past year that is under $100?
Oh, that's interesting. Oh gosh. I'm not a big shopper, but I'm sure there's a really good answer to this.
Besides the drywall and the mud behind you.
That was a great purchase. This time of year, well, not so much today because it's warm, but the thing that I probably love most in my house is my heated mattress pad. I know that's like totally has nothing to do with real estate.
No, this is good. Go ahead. Yeah.
So yeah, it's a two-sided mattress pad that heats up. So like before I get into bed, because my bedroom right now is unheated. So before I get into bed at night, I turn that sucker on and you just get in and it's just like, it's the most warm, cozy, awesome feeling. You can get those at like Bed Bath & Beyond. Even Walmart has them, but they're cheap ones at Walmart. They're not very nice, but
yeah, I was going to say, awesome. You personally, with, it's questionable if you'll have plumbing or heat anywhere you go. I think that's a good purchase.
Exactly.
Shockingly, you would have electric to make that work, which is still good. So we're good there.
Well, right now I have about 4 working outlets, so there's a lot of extension cords in the house.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome. Well, Chris, I really, really, really appreciate you coming on the show today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nick. It was awesome. I really like talking with you. Thank you so much.
Oh, awesome. And folks, thank you so much for taking part in another episode of the Shut Up and Do It podcast. We bring as much value as we can by sharing top quality guests and speakers. A huge thank you today to Chris McCarron. And remember to check out her podcast, the Get Your Fill podcast. And what was that website one more time, Chris, where they can find the book and the podcast?
EYIMbook.com.
EYIMbook.com. The book is called Empower Your Inner Millionaire, a woman's guide to financial independence through real estate investing. We had a great time today going through her house hacking routine. Please be sure to hit the like and subscribe buttons below to be notified when we have new podcasts released as always, and head over to shutupanddoitrealestate.com for all the episodes. We will see you on the next one.